In this lecture, we'll take a look at how we can search for a specific element in an array, and we'll also take a look at how we can have arrays of objects. One of the most common operations that we can perform on arrays is searching for a specific element. Now, there are several ways that we can do this, and the most basic approach is called the sequential search, or a linear search. The idea is pretty simple. We just simply check each element in the array to see if it's identical to the value that we're looking for. If it is, then we have found it. If not, then we'll just check the next element in the array. And we just keep repeating this until we either find it or we go to the end of the array and we can conclude that the element's not in the array. Here's an example of an array, and let's suppose we want to find the value 45. Now, if you look over the entire array here, you can see that it does exist right here. So we will find it, but remember, we gotta think about the process that a computer is gonna take. It doesn't look at the entire array and just spot it right at index 4. We have to look at one element at a time. So the first step is to compare 45 with the value in list 0 to see if they're equal. Since 35 does not equal 45, this is false. So now we move on to the next element. So we look at list 1 and compare 12 with 35. And this is, of course, going to be false. So we're going to have to keep repeating this. So we just keep continuing. We just check the next element of the array. So we'll check 27, we'll check 18, and so forth. And we keep doing this until we either find the 45 or we get to the last element of the array. So if we find the value, then we will report the index of the array that contains the value. We don't need to report the value. I mean, we're trying to find that value, but we want to know where in the array it is. So we just report the index. Now, if we don't find the value, then we need to give some indication that it's not there. So normally we would return some value that we know cannot be an index. -1 is a really good example because we've already said that you can't have a negative value be the index of an array. So most people will associate -1 as indicating that the value hasn't been found. In this particular example, list 4 is 45. So what would happen is when we get to this iteration in our search, we'll stop here. We say that we find 45, and we'll return the position as being 4. So here's the complete method for searching for an item in the array. So we have our list. So we have our list as passed as a parameter. We have the length of the array, because remember, we may not have stuff in every single element, so we need to know how far we're going. And then we have the item, and this is the value that we're actually looking for. So we have our while loop right over here. That's not a good line. Let's see if I can make a better line. There we go. That's a little better. We'll go with it. So we have our while loop that checks for two things. It checks to see that the index is less than the length, which means are we still in the array? Do we still have elements to check? And then we have this not found Boolean variable. So we use an additional Boolean variable to immediately get out of the loop as soon as we find the item. Because if we take a look at the next line, so if list index equals item, then we set our found to true. So at this point, we found the item. We don't need to continue on with the array. So we can just, when we go back to the while loop, since found is now set to true, not true is false, so we immediately get out of the while loop. Now, if we haven't found it at that particular element, then we just increase the index by 1. So this allows us to go to the next element in the array. So once we get out of the loop, then one of two things has happened. We either found what we're looking for, or we haven't found it. So we see here that if we found it, then we'll return the index, so the position where the element is. And if we have not found it, then we'll return a -1.